Another Dead Teenager, a Paul Turner Mystery, Book 3. Author, Mark Richard Zubro. Stonewall Inn Mysteries. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 9. At home, Paul found Jeff playing electronic games with Ben. Paul hugged his younger son and his lover. Got time for a game, Dad? Maybe later. Is your homework done? Yeah. We ate at Mrs. Tolucci's. I like the police around the house. Mrs. Tolucci made them come in and eat dinner with us. They were nice. I'm glad. Where's your brother? Upstairs. They're studying for a test. As Paul ascended the stairs, he didn't hear any sounds coming from his son's room. He tapped lightly on the door. He got a lazy, "Yeah," in response. He opened the door. Jose was sitting at his son's desk. He was staring at a page of a paperback copy of Great Expectations. Brian had a hand casually draped over his friend's shoulder while pointing with his other hand to a passage in the book. I told you it was Pip, Brian said. Okay, yeah. Paul thought back to the numerous other times he'd seen his son and Jose having physical contact, horsing around at the neighborhood pool, wrestling, punching, playfully sitting next to each other on a couch with their legs and knees touching. Jose turned to Paul and grinned. He said, Hey, Mr. Turner, how's it going? Tough case you got. I like the protection when I go everywhere. I feel like the president with all the security guards. Jose, I need to talk to you, Paul said. Okay. Jose glanced at Brian. Is something up? He's my dad. He's a cop. He asked questions. He wanted to know about you and your dad, and I wouldn't tell him anything. I told him to ask you. The two friends looked at each other. Jose nodded, then turned to Paul. Jose's smile was gone, and his black eyes glittered. Did Brian know you wanted to talk to me? Jose asked. Yes. And he didn't say anything to me about it. He wouldn't tell me your secret. I asked him not to tell that I wanted to talk to you. Don't blame Brian. Okay. I guess, Jose said. That picture of you and your dad on the television set, Paul said. That was taken at the gay pride parade. This is bullshit, Jose said. His face was twisted in anger and his fists were clenched. He stood up. I don't have to listen to this. You better talk to my dad. He's not your dad, is he? Fear chased all other reactions off Jose's face. Mr. Turner, what are you talking about? Jose took a step toward Paul and tipped over the chair he'd been sitting in. There are no records of identification for you or Mr. Martin before 4 years ago. You both appear out of nowhere. That's not your business, Jose said. Jose, Paul said very quietly, please sit down. Don't you try and wreck what we've got, Mr. Turner. A tear crossed Jose's right cheek. He brushed at it with the sleeve of his white sweatshirt. I just want to find out what's going on, Paul said. You're going to screw everything up, Jose said this with quiet defeat. I want to help. You're going to screw everything up. Now the words were repeated with a trace of defiance. I'm not going to let that happen, Jose said. Now, he was angry and loud. I'm not going to let you or anybody ruin what I've got. I don't want to ruin anything, Jose. Please sit down. Brian said, He's my dad, Jose. You know you can trust him. He's okay. You've always trusted him. I have. You know I do. Jose yanked the chair off the ground and straddled it backwards. He pointed a finger at Paul. You don't have to ask me anything. I'm going to tell you. Nobody's going to ruin what I've got. Nobody. I'm going to tell, and we'll run if we have to. You can't stop us. Paul said nothing to this angry frontal attack. Come on, Jose, Brian said. It'll be okay. You should have warned me, Jose said. Brian looked agonized. He gazed from his dad to his friend. I kept your secret, he finally said. Big deal. Why don't you wait in the living room, Brian? Paul said. I don't care if he hears this, Jose said. He knows most of it. Jose, Paul said, I don't want to make trouble for you. I want to listen and understand. Jose pulled in a deep breath, spread his arms wide on the back of the chair, and looked at Paul intently. His gaze seldom wavered from Paul's eyes as he told his story. I grew up to be a wild kid. My parents didn't know how to handle me, and after a while, they didn't want anything to do with me. They had problems of their own. I had been placed in 2 different juvenile homes by the time I was 9. By age 11, I spent most of my time in foster homes and being passed around by state and city departments of child welfare. It wasn't in this state, and Martin wasn't my last name, so you won't be able to trace me. The first time I had sex with a 13-year-old in the basement of a child welfare center, I was 10. They had 17 of us staying where there was supposed to be only 5. He showed me how to hustle guys for money. Others showed me how to steal, sell drugs, live on the streets, and on my wits. I'm sorry, Paul said. I don't know if I want you to say anything, Mr. Turner. I've never told any adult besides Will all this. I think I'd just like to tell it. Paul remained silent. No foster home could hold me. I ran away to somewhere warm and lived with a series of guys who were happy to keep me as long as I returned sexual favors. When I was 12, I met Will. He didn't want to have sex with me. He was this nice gay man who lived next door to the guy who was keeping me. Will would do carpentry work out in his garage every night after he got home from work. I would go over there and watch and talk with him. I offered myself to him. He said no. He showed me how to carve, measure, hammer, and put things together. I'd screw my sugar daddy at night and run around on the streets all day, and then spend an hour or so with Will after he got home. My sugar daddy got tired of me. I was too wild. I wouldn't settle down even for a safe roof over my head. And then I got in trouble with the cops again. They sent me to another foster home, but I ran away the first night. On my 13th birthday, I used a gun to rob somebody. The cops were after me. I ran to Will. He said I'd have to turn myself in. I said I would if I could live with him. He told me that no one would sanction a gay man just bringing a kid into his home. He was afraid of the law. I did turn myself in. I got sent to a juvenile place for 6 months. While I was there, I thought about Will a lot. He could be gruff, but he always took time to explain things to me. I'd had enough of chaos. I wanted a calm life. He had. In that juvenile home, I had time to think and plan. They let me out in the care of another foster family. The first day I went over to Will's, he seemed surprised and happy to see me. I told him I wanted to live with him and everything. He said no. I tried every seduction technique I'd learned. He told me he'd let me come over after school and do my homework, and he'd work with me every day, and we'd see if we'd get along. I knew I had him. I did everything I promised. The foster family didn't mind where I went. The cops weren't over all the time hassling them or me. I began staying longer and longer at Will's each day. We started eating dinner together. He showed me how to cook. Jose's eyes got shiny. That Christmas, I gave him a gift that I'd carved from a block of wood. On Christmas Eve, I asked if I could stay late. He agreed. He made a big fire in his fireplace. He let me snuggle up to him. We watched some of those old weepy Christmas movies together. At midnight, I kissed him for the first time. I wanted to live with him from then on. He wouldn't let me. Finally, the next summer, after I graduated 8th grade, we decided to move out of that town to Chicago. No one knew us here. We could change our identities and pose as father and son. The foster family wouldn't miss me. I love him more than anything. I will never do anything to hurt him. If you try and take us to court to report us, I'll never testify against him. I'll deny everything I've told you. I'll run away. I can live on my own. Now that I'm older, I can do even more than when I was a kid. Tears ran down Jose's face. Don't wreck it for me, for us. Mr. Turner, I know you're a cop, and there's rules about what you're supposed to do, but I swear to God, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. We're not hurting anybody. Please let us be. By any standard, this was an older man living in a sexual relationship with a minor. It was illegal, and Paul Turner could lose his job if he didn't report it. He did not want to let his career rest on the possibility that no one would ever find out that he knew these two were directly violating the law. Everything will work out, Paul said. My goal as a cop and a person is not to wreck somebody's life. I need to think about this and probably talk to Will. And don't be mad at Brian, he's a good and loyal friend. He did extraordinarily well in a tough situation. Okay. Jose wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I'll drive you home in a little while, Paul said as he left the room. He heard the voices of the two teenagers, but did not stop to listen. Several minutes later, Brian came down the stairs. Paul met him in the kitchen. What's going to happen? Brian asked. Are you going to report them? Relax, Paul said. I'm not going to make any hasty decisions or do something to hurt your friend. You were in a tough spot. You did a good job. I still feel kind of strange. Did Jose say he was angry at you? No. He's cool. When did he tell you he was gay? Paul asked. He didn't have to. I went over there to play one time just after he moved here. As I walked up to the front door, I happened to see them kiss. Jose saw me watching. I already knew about gay stuff because you talked to me. I just figured it was another gay thing. Never thought a lot about it. He told me the whole story last summer, when we went on that weekend camping trip. Paul heard a knock on the front door. Jeff answered, and a minute later, Rose DeLucci entered the kitchen with an iron kettle. I've got leftover ravioli from when the boys ate. Want me to fix it? You look awful. Brian left the kitchen. Paul talked about the case as he cut vegetable for salad, heated bread, and set the table while Mrs. DeLucci warmed up the homemade ravioli. Halfway through dinner, he finished the story of the case. I'll talk to my sources about protection for the boys, Mrs. DeLucci said. You won't have to worry. Her talking to people could mean anything from being connected to the most powerful mafia don in the country to gossiping with the neighbors. Often amazing things seem to get done when Mrs. DeLucci talked to people. That's not all that's bothering you, Mrs. DeLucci said. Sometimes I wish you weren't quite so shrewd, Rose, Paul said. How can I help? He told her about Jose and Will. Mrs. DeLucci listened without interrupting. Paul finished. If I don't tell, and it ever comes out, I'm in trouble. Doubly so, because I'm a gay cop. It looks like I'm trying to cover up a man-boy relationship. And I am. Ian said I shouldn't turn them in. Brian doesn't want me to hurt his friend. He's watching me carefully on this. It's a hell of a dilemma. He looks to me to do the right thing. I don't know what that is in this case. Rose, I don't know what to do. Rose sipped her tea and sighed. It is not as much of a dilemma as you think, she said. When is the boy going to be 18? In 5 months. In which case, it is not a problem for anyone anymore. Unless Jose gets angry and turns on him and wants to sue him. For years after. Rose sat thoughtful for a few minutes, then reached over and patted Paul's arm. These two people love each other. Jose is no longer a problem to society. In fact, he is very productive. He works hard in school, gets good grades, hangs around with good kids like Brian. He doesn't do drugs. He left behind a life of hell. She sighed deeply. I will be 93 years old in 2 weeks. I've seen a lot of pain and agony in those years and a lot of joy and happiness. Now I'm dying. I know people put each other through hell often for no other reason than that they exist. Who is to judge that Jose and Will don't truly love each other? I suppose 20, even 10 years ago, I might have thought differently. Maybe knowing that I'm going to die, thinking about it, makes me see things in new ways. I see two human beings who have found caring and love. Who has been harmed? The boy. He's been in your home hundreds of times. Is he a bad influence? Do you like him? Is he going to be a good adult? Is telling about them going to make either of them better? Paul shook his head no. It is wrong for adults to exploit kids for sex. Is this situation that? No, Paul said. The question is not society's morals. On one hand, you've got moral rigidity. On the other, common sense and doing the right thing. The possibility of leaving them be and it affecting your job is incredibly remote. Your job is also to ensure crime doesn't happen. And because of this relationship, Jose has stopped committing crimes. I think you should leave them be. They found love. Let them keep it. It's not up to you to destroy it. Trust a dying old woman one more time, Paul. It is okay if you don't tell. Be thankful he's not out trying to get revenge on everyone who hurt him since he was small. The list would never end. They talked quietly for a few minutes before Rose left. Paul hugged Ben and Jeff, then he drove Jose home. In the car, Jose was quiet as they pulled up in front of his house. Jose asked, "Are you going to talk to Will?" "Not tonight," Paul said. "You and Mr. Martin have nothing to fear from me." "Thanks, Mr. Turner," Jose said. Paul stuck out his hand. Jose shook it. Paul saw the uniformed cops sitting in their car. He watched Jose enter the house. The uniformed cops weren't going to be able to stay on guard long. They had to solve the case soon. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.